Welcome to the Moments That Matter podcast. My name is Laura Escamilla. I'm your host, and I have two very good friends with me today. I have Rochelle. Rochelle is by profession a sales representative, and she has one son, Eddie. And I have my friend Audrey, who is an educator, and she has two sons. She has Evan and she has Matthew. What we're going to talk about today is a little out of my scope, so I have two experts in the field with me. And we're going to start by reminiscing a little bit. When my son Lucas was 3 years old, he started playing baseball. And when your sons play sports that little, the first thing they tell you they want to be when they grow up is a professional whatever. They want to be a professional baseball player. He's going to be in the MLB. He's going to play for the Astros, all the fun stuff. And then he started playing football. And then, of course, he's going to play for the Cowboys. So these are the only goals that I feel like little boys who play sports want when they grow up. But the reality is, as you get older, it gets harder and harder to maintain that kind of enthusiasm and work ethic for such a thing. That's why we have you all here today, because both of you have successfully gotten your sons to be Division I college athletes. And that is a big feat. Doing a little research, I realized that there are 8 million student athletes in high school, and only 480,000 get to compete at the college level. That's 6%. This is practically impossible.
Wow.
But these numbers are insane. And Evan is a baseball player. According to these numbers, there are 482,000 high school athletes, and only 2.2% play at Division I.
Oh, wow. That's exciting to hear.
Yeah. And football players, there is 1 million high school football players, and 2.9 play Division I. That's insane. That's Division I. Obviously, we have Division II, Division III sports, but to get your sons their freshman year into Division I schools, that must have been challenging. Along the way, I'm sure a lot of ups and downs. So that's what we're going to talk about and see if we can give some parents insight on how to make this happen for their kids. Or, honestly be able to say, I don't know if this can happen. I mean, just be realistic, because that's a hard conversation to have. It is hard to talk to your kids about if college is for them, if that's the right move for them just in general, but then to be athletes in school, that's kind of hard. So let's talk about, at what point did you know your sons were going to be able to do this? I mean, obviously, like I said, probably when they're little, they want to do this, want to go to the NFL. Eddie's a football player, Evan's a baseball player, and MLB probably from age 5 or 6. And they were both multi-sport athletes. When did we start focusing on what they're doing?
For Eddie Lee, it just was apparent very early on that he was good at every sport he played. And his dad, his uncle, his grandpa, and his great-grandpa all played in college. And it never was really out of the question completely. But when we really knew for sure was after his 8th grade year. He was going into the 9th grade. We'd talked about it a lot over the years. I just said, Eddie Lee, do you want to get a scholarship to go to college? And he said, yes. And I said, which sport? And immediately he said football. And the reason I said that, because basketball at that time seemed to me was equal to football, his love. But he immediately said football without any hesitation. And that's when I said, okay, why don't we do this? Why don't we put all of our eggs in the football basket? You can still play basketball in high school, but we'll do all camps, all training will go towards football. Because if you want a scholarship, we know how hard it is and know how much work it's going to be. So let's do that. And we as a family made that decision. And
did you already know at that point because of the family history of what was required to do that? Or did you have to do research on that?
No, I didn't know all the answers, because there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle there. I think being very open and talking with people and getting their opinion, especially people that have done it already. So yeah, I guess I did do some research, and I did find out the private camps were super expensive and everybody went to them, but the college camps were $10 and $15. And that is really where you needed to go, because the college coaches are on the campus and they can see you. But that took a while. We did a lot of things leading up to that, but that was one of the things that I learned.
8th grade is when you started to have
That's
that
when we
serious
did.
conversation.
That's when I did. I don't
Yeah.
know the right answer there,
No, right.
but I think playing multiple sports is super good.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think enjoying your junior high and high
Right.
school athletics is paramount.
Right. And for us, just as parents, also with our kids, just playing sports in junior high and outside of school, that was a big thing. I don't want to have to make you go. And the sport should never be something I need to
Yeah.
force you to practice or force you to do. You have to enjoy it and want it.
Mhm.
And that was early on. If you don't want to go to practice or you don't want to do this, we're done because this is too much work.
Yeah.
So I imagine at that level, it
You-
has to be self motivated.
I would just, a caveat here is it can't be your love. It has to be the child's love.
Right.
Mhm.
The last thing we want is for them to be miserable because we're
Mhm.
making them do it. And it was the same for us too with our family. His dad, his grandpa, they all played sports in high school, even in college levels. It's something that ran in the family. So right when he was itty bitty, we started Boys and Girls Club at a young age, did the rec league. His dad even coached the
Right. Little
sport.
league.
I mean,
Mhm.
Evan started like at 4 years
Mhm.
old. And from then on, he loved it. He enjoyed it. And of course, he did play football as well, and he loved it as well. But it just always seemed like he was just so into baseball. For us as well, it was around the middle school time that actually a little before that, that we started doing those select teams, investing in those World Series events. And honestly, I can say it was all worth it because for baseball, that's really where you're going to get looked at and get seen later on, as far
Mhm.
as from the schools. And those select teams are the ones that actually the coaches do help you get noticed or get
Right.
your son noticed.
So for
Or daughter.
baseball was
Mhm.
very much the outside
Mhm.
activities, the club stuff,
Yes.
the travel leagues and all that, those kind of things.
S-
I remember, I don't know at what point it happened for Evan because we've known each other for a long time, that he was playing in the Junior Olympics or some sort of team of that nature, right?
He did get
It was like
to
15,
play
16 years
in
old.
the USA team.
Okay.
He was able to go do some camps with that he got selected for. And
But-
that was actually hosted at a college.
Those are really the things for baseball
Oh,
that got him
yes.
noticed. right?
Definitely. And I highly encourage a lot of parents that ask us, yes, I really do agree with the select sports for baseball because that's really where they're going to get
Right.
what.
Not really
Mhm.
so much on the school team, but
Well, and with like the high school, the coach, we were blessed to have a really good coach at that high school that he was at, and he did help as well.
Mhm.
The high school coaches did really push and send emails as well. Evan would, of course, reach out to him.
how about for Eddie? Was
Mhm.
that also, you said the camps and stuff is where he got noticed?
Yeah, one of the things that I think really helped him overall, because we didn't just do 7-on-7, which is really popular now. And it was really catching on when Eddie got into like the 9th grade. And so that's kind of the 7-on-7 is kind of like the club. But
In
we
the
did
summer.
a lot of club basketball. And what I think helped Eddie Lee with the club basketball is we played some really outstanding athletes and initially had a lot of anxiety as a little boy playing the really exceptional athletes, but we kept rolling him out there but he
Mhm.
wanted to do it.
Right.
But he was afraid. He had anxiety, but we kept at it. And I think what happens when he got to experience all that travel, club basketball, your confidence goes up because you're actually having playing time and you're
Right.
playing exceptional athletes. And the first sport he started was soccer. And then we started doing baseball. He played with Evan.
Mhm.
Sammy was the coach of one of the teams
Mhm.
when they were like 5 or
Yeah.
6 years old. And then when we got to junior high, he actually even played soccer in junior high. Because, in junior high, you get to play almost everything. I think just the exposure of all of it builds
Yeah.
and it gives the kid confidence. And, there's more than just that. They make friends. I mean,
That's
that's
right.
how we all know each other.
They make
because of our-
friends in all the districts.
Yes.
Like even out of town, the
Each other.
friends that they make on these
Right.
Yeah.
trips,
There's more benefit than just the kid
Mhm.
being exposed to all that competition. So I think
Definitely.
competition is really a big one.
So you kind of mentioned coaches writing letters or sending emails. And what is that process like when you actually start getting into we want to get seen film footage, their stats and all those kind of things that I'm just saying words because I looked up stuff, but I
Yeah.
imagine these
I
are
mean,
all
it's a
processes.
process. I know the coaches in the college level are not allowed to contact the athletes in high school. The coaches can reach out to them and send emails and
Their high school coach.
yeah, like
Mhm.
recommendations, and also their coaches for travel.
Mhm.
But yeah, they can't talk to them.
The
Yeah, to
student.
the athlete
Mhm.
during
How
high
about the
school.
parents?
They can, but it's recommended that you don't interfere.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Let the coaches do it. It's a lot more professional. And since they work with your athlete, they can give a lot more
Information than just
Yeah.
as a parent that I think they're
Mhm.
amazing. Is that the same
Definitely.
for
Well,
football?
what's nice about football is the huddle.
Yeah, the
Everybody has
videos.
it. A coach just goes on to huddle if they
Mhm.
hear about this kid and they can watch what he did
The
Friday
footage,
night.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they get 3 different angles. So that's a huge thing in the football
Yeah.
world,
Right.
huddle. But I think back in the day, coaches would get so much film. But
Mhm.
I think just getting your name out there.
Twitter.
Yeah.
Twitter's
Social
Twitter
media.
is huge
Mhm.
now.
With coaches.
Be very careful what you put on
Mhm.
Twitter.
Right.
And so that is used and very, very
Yeah.
helpful. But going to the camps is great because you're tweeting, okay, I'm going to be at
Yeah.
Texas A&M or I'm going to
Tagging
be at
them.
UTSA. And you're tagging the different coaches and
Yeah.
it's easy to get
Or
their
for
names,
their
right?
tag
So
names, yeah.
that's kind of how it's done these days.
Yeah.
And it's safe to say that aside from these travel teams and camps, there was additional training happening, right?
Oh, yeah. Huge.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's an
So-
investment itself.
Yeah, we had all kinds of trainers, strength
Conditioning.
trainers, and he went to multiple ones. Even in baseball, he went to a pitching coach,
Yep.
a hitting coach, and
Mhm.
then, of course, in football, there's multiple things
Right.
like quarterback coach, and he had several of those. His dad helped him, several coaches. But yes,
So
and
it
then the
is
investment is taking them to
Right.
every single
Mhm.
practice, and it was daily.
my follow-up is, as a parent, how do you support? And it's really just this, obviously monetarily, to pay for these things,
Yes.
help
Oh, yeah.
find the coaches, sit there during their practice, because sometimes at this point they're not driving and
Mhm.
you're going and waiting and
Mhm.
watching.
I was like the only mom lots of times, not always, but I would just sit and wait because
Yeah.
why come home, right?
Exactly. Waiting.
You talk to other parents because I'm a talker. I'm going to ask lots of questions, and it does take a village.
It does. We went in not knowing really, like, how do we do this? But as we did meet a lot of parents, I would say more when we went out of town.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
You would just hear lots of things. Make sure they post their videos when they are hitting or
Mhm.
at batting practice or pitching. And I was like, oh, okay. It was a big
Trying
learning
to take cues
experience.
from
Yeah.
parents in the process.
Honestly, for baseball, his junior year, he went to Atlanta, and
Mhm.
that's where the big perfect games are, where the coaches will take them.
Mhm.
There are colleges from everywhere, and that is actually where he got his first offer.
Mhm.
And you're like, okay, wait a minute. Like, what are the questions he can ask? Because once a coach will approach their coach and say, we want to offer Evan this,
Mm.
then we can call them with
At that point.
our son and talk about what that offer is.
So at
Mhm.
some point, is there a conversation with your child about the kind of questions they should be asking and the kind of
Yes.
information they should have when they're
Like,
talked
you
to?
don't want to jump on it right away. You want to
Right.
see what they have to offer, because there's probably other coaches that saw you, and we still have 5 other days here.
And years ahead. I mean,
Yes.
still.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's exciting for them because they're like, oh my gosh, this is a D1 school that just gave me an offer. Right away, they just want to jump on it.
And
But
take
it's
it.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so from that weekend into the week on, he had
That's where
other
it started.
coaches. We would call them back because they would contact the coach and give offers. And
Was that also Eddie's first experience?
Yeah, so it was smaller schools initially, and so COVID messed up a lot of things. It messed up
yes,
a lot
it
of things
did.
for a
Oh
lot of
my
us
gosh.
because going in his senior year, he got no camps, no junior days. That was a level playing field for everybody in those 2 grades, right?
Everybody was doing it.
Yeah, so it was a little different, but yeah, so he started getting offers from smaller schools, and he would post them on Twitter because we were
Mhm.
coached to do that, which was correct
Mhm.
information. It's not like you're bragging, you're just saying, I just got offered. We kind of knew Baylor was a school that he was really interested in, and it was his great grandpa and his dad and his uncle and I went there too. And so we knew he was on the board. We had a person helping that knew the coaches directly. So what that means, they literally write out on a white chalk dry erase board names of
Potential
quarterbacks, right?
recruits.
And
Mhm.
Eddie was on the board, but he was on the bottom of the board. And we knew that.
Yeah.
And so we knew that his chances were not very good there. So then we kind of took a step back. Okay, instead of Power Five, maybe Group of Five.
Mhm.
And so then when UTSA showed interest, we really got excited about that because Coach Traylor was brand new at UTSA. He had been there 1 year, 2020. And, that was a very weird year. They actually did play most of the season. And he just seemed genuine to me. He did
Mhm.
seem like that to Renee, my husband, to Eddie Lee, to Eddie Lee's dad. Like we all just sensed this was a good fit
Mhm.
for lots of reasons. You ask those questions. Well, how many quarterbacks? Where do you see Eddie Lee? Would he redshirt his first year? We did know to ask some of those questions.
Right.
Looking back at it, I probably would ask different and even more questions now, but I didn't
What
know.
would those questions be?
Just very realistic. His position coach, asking the position coach, what are you looking for? Where do you actually see Eddie Lee
Mhm.
in that lineup? And where do you see these other kids? And just be more specific about that. And they're going to answer you.
Mhm.
They are. I mean, it's not a game.
I agree with you on that
Yeah.
because we didn't know what kind of questions to ask either. And at that time, he's a utility player.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, is he going to play?
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But
Do you feel if you had more information, you might have made a different choice?
possibly yes, because I know now when people ask us, we'll give them advice as well.
Right.
Like, you should ask this or
Right.
Well, and ask about, is it a full scholarship?
Mhm.
What does it pay for everything? Is this a genuine offer, like a hard offer? Because the school has to offer all these scholarships because they're not going to get them all.
yeah.
And that's very similar to college admissions. They make
Exactly.
offers and not every kid's going to accept their
Yeah.
position to attend.
That's what I would ask more than anything. The position that your kid plays, talk to the position coach.
Mhm.
We didn't do that.
Mhm.
I think we should have.
And I can say that I do remember when we talked with that first coach when we were in Atlanta on the phone, I was like, okay, are books involved in this? Is living?
Mhm.
Because every sport's different as far as the amount of scholarship that they give. And it just depends on what position they
Mhm.
play. So those were very good questions because you want to know what you're going to have to pay, what
And
that portion is.
Do I understand correctly that there are offers to play, but they don't come with a scholarship? Or is if they get an
Like a
offer, it comes with a
walk-on?
scholarship?
It's called preferred walk-on, but
Okay.
they tell you straight up that is never held from you.
Mhm.
I'm going to offer you a position, but it's called preferred walk-on.
Walk-on.
Right.
Okay.
But no,
And it comes with no
right.
scholarship dollars.
Right. You don't get anything paid for, but you are treated like a scholarship athlete.
Mhm.
Like you have all access to the training and
Mhm.
everything
As far as
that
the team is concerned,
far as-
there's no difference. It's just the tuition school situation.
Mhm.
correct.
So what did that look like academically for your kids? Did they need to worry about their SATs and ACTs and their grades? And what was your expectation of them?
Grades, yes. I mean, when we got a little more educated on it, when this process was already happening, because he had verbally committed
Mhm.
already as a junior in
Mhm.
high school, just verbally. It was like, okay, you've got to keep that GPA up, Evan. You've got to work hard. Your grades can't be lower than this. Because once you get into college, they did have a recommended GPA that you
Mhm.
had to keep in order to keep that scholarship.
Right.
So he wanted it.
The fortunate thing is Eddie Lee didn't have to have an SAT or ACT score. He
Mhm.
didn't have to. That was a blessing. But 2.0, I think, is what
Mhm.
you can't fall below
Just
that. Yeah.
passing
Because
it.
you have to maintain that to keep your scholarship. But I think that's only 9 hours, if I'm correct. Now that's football, and I don't
Yeah.
know if that's
And I
baseball.
believe baseball, they had to have 12 hours and maintain, I think, no lower than a 2.8.
So
Mhm.
yeah, there's 85 scholarships in Division I football, and that pays for your school and room and board.
Mhm.
That is what
Yeah.
Eddie Lee received when he went to UTSA.
Let's back up a little bit and talk about your children when they leave? I know Eddie Lee graduated early from high school to get there for spring ball. How did that feel as a parent? Were you prepared for that? You're waiting for your kid to
Yeah.
leave in
Mhm.
August and they leave
Yeah.
in January.
Yeah. That was very interesting because number one, that was COVID.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
And normally
right.
football season would have ended in December.
Mhm.
Football season didn't end until January
Mhm.
because we went to the fourth round at Eddie's
That's
senior
right. Yes.
year and we played January 1.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So that following weekend, he really wanted to do something with his friends. So I took him to San Antonio to Fiesta, Texas. And the next Thursday, we moved him in. So was I ready? No,
Yeah.
Mhm.
no.
But that's not required of all college athletes that
And
go,
it's
or
not
that's
required
common
of,
for football.
it's very common for skilled players in football now.
Mhm.
Very common. Like for instance, when Eddie Lee went in spring 2021, UTSA was just not on the radar at all for football. It had only been in existence 10 years at that time, or
Mhm.
maybe 9 years at that time. And it was 2 players, him and as his roommate. This last spring, 19 kids came because they're
Wow.
winning. And it's
Yeah.
so
And they
like
want
at
to
the,
be there from the start.
Mhm.
because you like for the quarterback, he's got to learn every position and the whole
Play
offense,
and yeah.
all the defense. So he has
There's
to learn a lot.
Mhm.
So it was beneficial. But because it was 2020, the fall, he didn't go to school one time. That part wasn't hard because it wasn't a normal senior year.
Mhm.
I would have loved for him to have gone to prom and graduated,
Yeah.
but he had already gone to college and he was like, no, I'm
No,
not
yeah.
doing that. So, for me, I would have liked that because he's my only son, but
Yeah.
I don't think about it much now.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Evan, I recall he would have to go live in the summer with like a host family to play ball and to do these things. That must have been also difficult to
Well,
handle.
actually, let me think here. So let me backtrack. So when he graduated, in 2020, he had to go to his college. I believe he had to be there in July,
Yeah,
Mhm,
pretty early.
mhm.
but that was COVID.
Mhm.
So it was very different. So basically, all their classes were there. They had to stay in the apartment with his roommate, the other
Mhm.
baseball players. And then at this college, he got to practice and play, but then ended up getting redshirted. And which to me, I think was actually a blessing because he was able to see how everything was going over there and how it worked. But then ended up getting COVID right before season was going to start.
Mm.
Because I believe they can allow red shirts to play maybe 2 games or so. So it was kind of just different
Mhm.
and not the experience that he was hoping to have.
Or somebody going in today. would
Yes.
have.
Mhm.
So at that point, he had decided to not take a scholarship for the next year and go into the portal. So for the portal, it's kind of a database where these college athletes can go in and get picked up by a school. And his whole goal was, I want to go to a school where I'm going to play.
Mhm.
You have that goal in mind. So while he was in that portal, he did do summer ball for a collegiate league.
Mhm.
And we were so lucky enough to have a really good friend of ours that lived in New Braunfels and allowed him to live with him while
Mhm.
he played on this collegiate league. So he was able to get looked at during that time.
So that's really where he got his next offers coming from that.
Yes.
Mhm.
And, it's very different, from other sports. With baseball, they can go to like 3 different schools just based on playing time and what they're wanting to do. So he decided to go the junior college, the JUCO route.
Mhm.
And oh my gosh, he picked a wonderful school and he played both years. And it was funny because Evan went in as a utility player for the D1 school
Mhm.
and then ended up being a pitcher
Right.
because that's what the coach saw. That was his really good strength.
But that was, am I correct? That's what he did in high school, right? He was a pitcher.
He did utility. So
Oh,
he
he
was
did.
pitcher. I believe he was a shortstop, outfield, wherever they needed him.
Mhm.
So, he could do anything and he was batting and everything. So coming down to the JUCO level, which people will ask us like, I don't know, like I want my son to go D1, but we're like, well, there's nothing wrong with JUCO because Evan had like the best experience and he got to play, and that's the most important thing. Now that he got those 2 years and got his associates there, now he got picked up by another D1 school.
Right.
So he will be going
Back to a
back
D1.
and got an extra year of eligibility because of COVID.
Yeah.
Right.
So he'll get 2 years hopefully there.
So he's entering his 4th year of playing
Yes.
college level.
Mhm.
And does he feel like, I imagine he grew and maturity wise,
Oh,
and
yes,
it's really made a difference.
tremendously.
What I remember this being a discussion. How did that shape him going into his freshman year with these other players that were obviously older and bigger and
Yes,
stronger?
way older. I
'Cause
mean,
some
you
of
had
them went
men with
JUCO too.
mustaches. It was
Right.
like, oh my gosh, big, strong guys. You've got this 18-year-old coming in, just turned 18 in May.
Mhm.
And it was like in this amazing university with beautiful facilities,
Mhm.
awesome uniforms. They give them everything.
Right.
And you're just like, oh my gosh, I need to compete. Like, you're back home, you're like amazing and you're doing well. And now you're in a place where all these guys did amazing at their
Right.
schools.
Right.
So it's your competing level.
Mhm.
And
You're
the-
not the
Mhm.
star anymore.
You're not the star
one of
anymore.
a lot
You're
of
with all the stars.
right. The other
So-
2.2%
Yes.
of athletes.
So
that-
it's all about keeping your mind
Right.
straight. And that
Mm.
was something he really had to learn was
Right.
how to stay focused, not get beat down mentally.
Mhm.
It was a lot of calls from Sam and I, sending him articles, motivational
Just
quotes,
encouraging.
encouraging him so he could stay positive
Right.
and not get broken down because it
And-
really takes a toll
Right.
on him.
And I know that Eddie as well. There's some grown men they're playing football. Eddie's a big guy
Yeah.
and he looks so small. That first year we
Yeah.
go support him and it's like, oh my gosh, he's just little compared to some of these
Yeah.
men.
Yeah. And so Eddie Lee was redshirted his freshman year, but we knew that. So no surprise. But NCAA rules now allow red shirts to play. They can play up to 4 games.
Mhm.
And so he got in
Mhm.
and actually played his freshman year. And then last year he was coming off an injury. He had he broke his foot. And so he was recuperating in the summer. And that was a bummer. Almost all football players and probably baseball players too
Yeah.
were going to suffer an
Injury.
injury. It's
Mhm.
just, it's the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
And so that is when he did get down. He was struggling,
Yeah.
but he came back, he bounced back and, praise God. And he did play some last year, but we are ready.
Yeah.
We, like all of us.
What kind of advice would you give other parents who are dealing with these kind of setbacks with their kids, injuries and playtime? And you mentioned you send Evan little notes of encouragement, but that must be hard when you're not with them. I remember you
hard.
going, I'm going to go see Eddie cook him some meals and
Mhm.
kind of lift his spirits.
Yeah. I mean, I think as a mom, you know your kid, right?
Right.
You know Skylar or Lucas when they're down,
Yeah.
or
Mhm.
you know your kids when they're
Mhm.
down, and just running up there, which is a blessing that it's not very far to drive
Mhm.
to San Antonio
Yeah.
to UCSA. I haven't done that often, but I have done that.
Yeah.
Boys are kind of private; they don't
Mhm.
express
They
a
try not
lot.
to show it.
Yeah.
But
Don't
I think we worry a little bit more.
Mhm.
But I know like there would be times during my lunch break, I would be like, hey, how you doing? How's it going? How you feeling today? Love
Mhm.
you. And just waiting for that response. Like,
Right.
oh my gosh, because they're not here. And you want to just keep their spirits up. And
Right. And have them know that you're thinking about them, even if they're not responding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if they're not thinking about you.
Exactly. It's like, why haven't you called? It's been a few days, but
Yeah.
I mean, we get it. I mean, they're so busy.
Mhm.
So busy.
As
What does that look
athletes.
like academics wise there? Skylar was a tutor for athletes her senior year, and she would talk about how they're required to do so many tutoring sessions and study time. What does that look like at that level?
Yeah. So initially, when they're brand new, they're required to do certain
So many
hours
hours.
of study hall.
Mhm.
But as they get older, that's, not such a stringent requirement.
Yeah.
They get more lenient if their grades are good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Passing, Now, if they're not passing, then that's another story. But academics, I mean, it's hard because playing football is a full-time job. I'm sure baseball is too.
Mhm.
I have Life 360 on my phone and I can see the amount
Yeah.
of hours that Eddie Lee is at the
Training.
facility.
Mhm.
And it's early morning. They do it in the morning. So like he's there at 6 a.m.
Mhm.
That's hard on a college student because they don't go
Yeah.
to bed early.
Very early.
And every day, and he has made the travel team since day one. So in the fall, from August to December, he's off one weekend. One.
Yeah,
That's
crazy.
hard
Yeah.
for us, you know.
Right.
So school's hard. It's a beat down in the fall. I mean, he loves it
Baseball.
and we all love it,
Yeah.
but
It's a commitment.
it is
It's
a
hard.
huge commitment and the grind is hard. And I want to say this. I used to hear this saying, it's not for everyone. And I used to think, oh, I don't like that. Because to me, what I heard was, you're not tough enough.
Right.
I
Mhm.
totally understand that statement now. It is
Right.
not for everyone. And there is no shame in that,
Mhm.
by the way. Our kids happen to love what they're doing.
Mhm.
And so it trumps the grind.
Right.
Yeah.
Even
It's
though the
true.
grind's hard,
Mhm.
it trumps it.
And I would say for D1 baseball, they would train in the fall, just strictly train. And then in the spring is all baseball
Right.
season. But now when you go to the junior college level, you play fall
And
games and
spring
spring.
games.
So it is full on.
Mhm.
But oh my gosh, Evan loved it. Like,
Right.
I mean, they're
It's just more
constantly
playtime.
playing.
It's more
Exactly.
playtime.
More
Mhm.
playtime.
Yeah.
Right.
And the coach gets to see in junior college, okay, who am I going to play in the spring? Who's going to
Oh,
get
yeah.
that time and who are my pitchers? So it's very different,
Mhm.
but the setting is smaller. Now for classes, they don't really have any tutors. They're all on their own. But it just
At
seemed like,
JUCO level.
yeah, and all the guys would would room together, and so
Mhm.
they would just be helping each other throughout these classes.
But with all the traveling and all the
Mhm.
game days, the missing of class and stuff,
Yeah.
that still had to be
Oh, yeah.
challenging to self-manage yourself.
And
you
it
know.
was online. The
Mhm.
classes were online, so he had to take his laptop with him,
Mhm. On
work
the
on it
bus or
late,
what have you.
do it when they got back to the
Mhm.
apartment. So it was just managing his time well, and he had to really learn that. And of course, as a mom, I'd be like, Evan, how are you doing? How are your grades? Are you doing okay? Yes, mom. Yes, I've got it. I've got it. So it's just kind of trying to let go as they get older. Like,
Right.
okay, you've got it. Like,
But at the D1 level, you want to worry about their grades too, because you're talking about their scholarship offers
Yes,
too,
right.
right? So for Eddie, not to get too personal, but his scholarship covered, you said, tuition and room and board,
Mhm, mhm.
and that's a common thing. And for Evan, that first year was tuition.
it was partial.
Mhm.
He got a partial amount. And a lot of that, from what we were told, is based on positions,
Mhm.
what they play. It just depends.
So
you
different
know.
positions get different scholarship amounts.
yes.
Okay. Is that true for football
Mhm.
also, or is that just your
No,
player year?
85 scholarships.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then they usually carry close to 100 kids. Now, travel, and this is a number, I used to know exactly what it was, but I want to say 58, 60 travel. That's a rule, an NCAA rule. But Eddie got to travel he's traveled every game.
Yeah,
he's
and
been
that
there.
experience to see different places and stadiums and
And
facilities.
you learn
and
a
things.
lot.
Yeah.
You learn, and he's had a great mentor. The kid that's ahead of him, Frank
Mhm.
Harris, has been a great mentor to him, and so he has great coaches. Now
Yeah.
that he's on his third offensive coordinator, because the first one
They
went
keep
to
getting hired.
yeah, the first one went to Illinois, and the second one went to Oregon, and now we're on our third one. But
Yeah.
So do the boys, obviously you talked about the rigor of their schedules and their practice
Mhm.
outside of that, and there's still additional training. I know you mentioned Eddie, like off-season stuff. He's doing extra work and still continuing
Mhm.
to work, and you have to keep it up. You're talking about seasons, but there's no breaks.
We're
no,
constantly
it's
still
constant.
paying
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
I mean, in our mind, it's an investment.
Right.
And the whole goal at the end is your child wants to get drafted. When they're draft eligible, they want to make a career of it. And as parents, we support what their dreams are.
Right.
And
That if
mhm.
they're willing to put in the work, right? Because
Exactly.
there's
yeah.
right.
Yeah. And I think Audrey mentioned it before, and you've said it. We've never had to force Eddie to
Mhm.
work for football. Now, there were other sports
That were
baseball. He liked baseball, but he didn't like to practice baseball.
And he was
He
good
just
at
wanted
it.
to go play.
Yeah.
But he just wanted to play. But
Yeah.
football, I mean, and he's now, I mean, he's in college and still does extra.
Yeah.
right.
He still
and
enjoys
still
it.
gets up and does extra.
Mhm.
So, advice for
Mhm.
parents of high school athletes, let's say the freshman athlete who has these aspirations and parents want to be supportive. When do you start and what point do you start film and keeping track and investing in this from go?
Well, I say first and foremost, and I know in the baseball world it's prevalent. It certainly is in the football world too. A lot of times the parent wants it more than the kid.
Right.
And so let's start there.
That's right.
Does your kid really want this?
Mhm.
Let's start there. Because if they do, then they are going to work hard
Yeah.
because they're not naive to how hard
Yeah.
it's going to be.
Mhm.
They don't know the extent of it, but they're not completely naive
Yeah.
to it.
Mhm.
So I think that's a good starting place. And then you have to be realistic. I mean, are they the star on the team or one of the stars on the team? Because they're going to have to be.
And is the team good?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
right.
mean, is
Yeah.
the team playing challenging?
And of course, they
Right.
had their schools that they wanted really bad.
Right.
You know, Evan had the schools that he was just hoping to get.
Same with Eddie. You mentioned
Mhm.
Baylor.
And then we
Yeah.
took him to those camps too to get looked at those
Mhm.
colleges.
One of the things that
Mhm.
we've heard, and I'm not kidding when I say 50 times from not just parents, the Rio Grande Valley is not recruited for football.
Mhm.
It's just not. And they'll say, your teams don't play hard other teams.
Mhm.
So
The
who cares
competition's
what
not there.
Eddie Lee did? So that was a battle we had to fight. Okay, well, watch his film
Mhm.
and let him come to your camp. We just kept getting him out there, rolling him out
Yeah.
there. We went to so many things. And it's not a regret
Mhm.
because you pick up a little bit from every camp,
Mhm.
every trainer.
Yeah.
You switch trainers, you switch, things because you learn different things. We even did yoga for a while.
Yes,
Uh,
we did Pilates.
yes,
And we're
I
taking
mean,
Evan to Pilates.
on
Yeah.
top of all the strength and
Mhm.
training and then the position and all that, we did that. I remember doing that, but
Yeah.
and then started eating better,
Right,
that
taking
nutrition.
care of
Mhm.
themselves.
So Eddie Lee is attention deficit, and I took him to an attention deficit coach here locally in the Valley, going into junior high. And one of the things she told us, you and I, eat real food. So I started cooking breakfast every single morning. That was probably sixth grade
Mhm.
till he graduated.
Right.
That's a lot,
Yeah.
Well, I know Sam was cooking steaks.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
He
mean,
would
yeah.
make
make
dinner.
steaks.
Yeah.
He would make he would get up super early in the morning, which he's doing it for Matthew too now. And he would make a steak or, have
To have for
chicken
lunch,
to have
yeah.
for lunch.
Yes.
Just
Yeah.
so we knew they were eating well.
Yeah.
'Cause
No,
the school lunch was never enough.
Yeah, no, and it's just when I say it takes a village, it takes a village. And I wasn't working when Eddie was in school. So
Mhm.
I was the one that took him to everything. And
Yeah.
it wasn't as difficult to make dinner and breakfast and lunch because I wasn't working.
Yeah.
So I was able to pour in more for him. And that was a blessing that our family was able to do that at that time.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
That's a really good piece of advice because that's not different for colleges. Make sure your child wants it, because
Yeah.
even as parents, you're like, oh, it'd be so awesome. Of course, you want your kid to go to an Ivy League. And of course,
Mhm.
you want your kid to be a doctor. But what do they want to do? And what are they prepared
Yeah.
to put the work in for? So that's very important to
Sure.
reflect, sit down and reflect before you start on the journey.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I think you've got to be realistic about it. And
Yeah.
are they good enough? I mean, I think we asked
Yeah.
ourselves that. Is
Yeah.
Eddie Lee good enough? And
And I want to say, just knowing both of you and knowing your families and being around you on this journey, I want to say maybe you all were the most critical of them
Mhm.
and their play because for us, watching Eddie on that field, we're like, oh my God,
Yeah,
he's
it's
so
exciting.
amazing.
Yeah.
It's exciting, amazing. And you're like, well, he could have this or he could have that. And the same
Yeah.
for Evan. We'd go to his games and oh my gosh, he struck out all these players. And then you had, his dad, Sam,
Yeah.
like, this did not
was
go the
so
way it was supposed
nervous.
to be planned, so I feel like
Watching on TV is what's nerve-wracking. We couldn't go to all his games,
Mhm.
but we were able to watch it on
Mhm.
TV. I couldn't even stay in the room. I had
Right.
to go out to the living room. Sam would be in the bedroom watching, and I'm like,
Well, you
oh,
started eating. I mean, you started
Yes.
a business
Yes.
making bracelets. It
Man.
got so
So
nerve-wracking.
it's just so nerve-wracking because you just want them to do so well.
Yeah.
And,
Right, of course.
and then we're waiting for that text message after. Like, how are you feeling? What do you
Mhm.
think, Evan? How you doing? And
Right.
just,
yeah. I want to say what's been such a huge blessing is the support of the Rio Grande
Mhm.
Valley.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, There's been a couple of games, the 2 years that Eddie's been on the team, that they let the crowd go down onto the field and
Yes, we were there.
yes, and do
We
autographs.
all got to go
And it
see.
is so cool
fun.
how supportive
Mhm.
the Rio Grande Valley is. It's humbling and
Yeah.
incredibly humbling. And people have reached out to me on social media because they don't
Right.
actually know me, and just so complimentary. And I just want to shout out to the RGV. Y'all are
Right.
awesome.
Definitely.
956.
Yeah.
Agree.
40956.
So one of the things that I think is so important about this journey that your boys are on is that, you mentioned both of you, your sons had people ahead of them to look up to and to know that it's possible, right? To know that his dad played and his grandpa and his
Mhm.
uncle and his dad, went and played here and they're athletes and it's possible. But your sons are that for somebody, right? So that's where the support comes from because there's little boys that this
Exactly.
is possible.
Mhm.
Somebody from here did this because not everybody has that. Not everybody has
Mhm.
a parent or somebody in their family who played at the college level. So they look to the next group, and it's somebody from our community
Yeah.
who goes and does
Right.
this and puts the work in. It's
Yeah.
possible if I do these things and work.
Mhm.
And that's so important. So the journey, if anything, whatever happens years
Mhm.
from now, that is important because it's opening the door for somebody else. Like you
Yes.
said, they don't come to the RGV, but they might now.
Mhm,
If
mhm.
Eddie
Right.
does everything that we hope he will, they might. And the same with
Yeah.
baseball. It's just,
And I
we're
can,
not,
and
yeah.
I can add to that while Evan was at this JUCO level, he had a very good relationship with his coach. The
Mhm.
coach was amazing, so nice. And actually, Sam even got to talk with him too, to where Sam and Evan were able to say, oh, well, there's this guy here at this high school that's
Mhm.
doing great. Maybe you got to look at him. So they were actually able to try to recruit guys from here.
Mhm.
And I think that was really nice that
Right.
they were.
Because
Yeah.
fortunately and unfortunately, we
Mhm.
live in an area that is a really tight community, but we
Mhm.
are in South Texas and we are in an area that is overlooked for a lot, not just in sports,
Yeah.
but in education
Right.
and all kinds of things, which is one of the main reasons we're doing this podcast, just to have access to things that students in larger communities have readily available and we
Mhm.
just don't. And
Yeah.
that is one of the important things about what we're trying to do and what the boys are doing. It's that everybody's carrying them on their shoulders.
Mhm.
But because it's so exciting to see kids from the community doing well.
It is.
Mhm. It
Yeah,
is.
I agree.
Yeah.
And
So,
they are so for each other. Like Eddie and Evan are so for each other,
Mhm.
Right.
because I guess there's a brotherhood
Mm.
of going to college and playing a
I
sport.
mean, they
Right.
grew up together. They were
Yes.
itty bitty when they
Yeah.
were playing, and now they're men,
Mhm.
and they'll message each other, keep in touch with each other. It's just great.
So to kind of wrap everything up, what would you say if at the end of this journey, they walk away with a college degree and the dreams, the goals, they don't really pan out, but from what it sounds like, they had an amazing journey. Like the people they've met, the relationships they've
Mhm.
built,
The
the
experience they've made.
experiences, the
Yeah.
places they've seen. I mean, it's worth it, right? I mean,
Oh,
it's
100%.
Yes,
I mean,
definitely.
sports is such a parallel to life, It teaches you to be mentally tough.
Yes.
Mhm.
It teaches you to be a team player,
Mhm.
humble. And so, yeah, I mean, of course, that's the dream because when they've been
Right.
wanting to do that. I mean, Eddie used to tell me, it used to be the NBA. When I'm in the NBA, I'm going to buy you a condo in
Oh,
Santa
yes.
Monica, California.
Yeah. Mhm.
But now I guess it's the NFL. But of course, like you were saying
Right.
at the very beginning,
That's so funny.
but no, it's absolutely 100% worth it
Yeah.
because of all of it,
Oh, I
all
agree.
the ups,
And
the downs,
just
and all of it.
overcoming challenges. Isaac and I talk about this a lot with the kids. Both our kids were in sports and life lessons that teaches you. But I imagine at this level, the getting up when you've been knocked down figuratively and physically,
Definitely. It's
both.
mentally draining
Yeah.
for
And
them.
just to, okay, we lost this one and let's go again. Or
Exactly.
I didn't get to play, but let's go back out there. That's kind of priceless. You can't
Yes.
put a dollar amount on that.
Yeah.
In life, that's takes you really far.
Yeah, I think that our kids are going to have no trouble in life,
Yeah.
Right.
whatever they do.
Mhm.
They've learned a lot.
Right.
I mean, I can definitely say Evan's learned a lot just
Right.
through this whole journey because it's very different. With baseball, you can go to 3 to 4 different schools, totally different ball game, but just with all that, he's learned so much and how to
Adapt.
adapt to it mentally, physically,
Mhm.
cooking for himself, making sure he eats well,
Mhm.
because the
'Cause
food's not always that
Sam's not
great.
going to be there
Yeah,
to
Sam's not there to make him those
Mm.
that good food, but I've really seen a big difference in him, and yeah,
his
it's been
maturity and
very
his growth.
positive.
And, right.
Yeah.
And would you recommend that people start or parents start with looking at colleges with sports, D1, D2? How do we start finalizing? Because in college, when you're looking for universities, we talk
Mhm.
about focusing on the school that offers the major
And
that
the
you want,
programs
the
they have.
program that
Mhm.
they have. And is it a good fit in the community and the goals of the school? That must be really hard
Yeah,
as
and
an
all
athlete.
those things are important. And I think if you as a parent can be realistic
Mhm.
and your son or daughter, they're younger and so they're not as mature, but you have to be realistic.
Mhm.
And are they a D1? Because there's nothing wrong with D2 or D3 or
Mm-mm.
JUCO. There's
Nothing
nothing
at
wrong
all.
with that.
Mhm.
So I think you kind of get caught up on the name. And if you can just really be realistic and ask the tough questions and get some honest feedback from collegiate coaches and see when your kid goes to the camp, what do you see?
Mhm.
And I think most collegiate coaches are going to be honest because this is their job. At least that's been my experience.
No, I agree. And I remember telling Sam, I wish I would have known how it really is for baseball playing in junior college, because it's so different and just playing time is so different. And the experience is so personal. Because when you go to a D1 school, I mean, it's big. It's a big amount of guys, and just the levels are just extreme. And if we would have known, because the whole idea was he wanted to go D1 so bad. But now that I know, there is nothing wrong going junior college level
Mm-mm.
first and then working your way up
Progressing.
to that D1 school
Mhm.
at the end after your 2 years. Because I believe you're required to do 2 years of junior college and then you get picked up by a school, because that's where they're going to see how you play.
Right.
And do I really want this guy? Rather than go straight to D1 and they're not going to know really what you're about.
Right.
So I would highly recommend not to overlook
Just jump.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you, ladies. It was
Thank you.
It's fun.
very educational for me. Thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful.
Thank you. This
Thank
was
you.
fun.
It was fun.